Hi, I'm Tommy Schnurmacher, and this is Chosen for What, brought to you by the Foundation for Genocide Education. My guest today is Dr. Eva Fogelman, a renowned psychologist and author who spent decades studying Holocaust trauma and the intergenerational transmission of memory and identity. Dr. Fogelman offers a perspective that challenges conventional thinking about inherited trauma. Rather than trauma itself being passed down, she believes it's a worldview, a sense of identity, and deeply ingrained relationship patterns that carry forward. Dr. Fogelman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tommy.
Now, it's obvious, Dr. Fogelman, survivors were traumatized. The question I have for you right off the bat, are the children and the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors traumatized themselves?
So first we have to get to the definition of what is trauma. My definition of trauma, Freud's definition of trauma, is that people who have gone through an experience that is overwhelming, that there is no way to possibly deal with that particular experience. Most children of Holocaust survivors did not have that kind of a trauma in their life. A small percentage did. Those child survivor, Joe's second generation, who grew up in Eastern Europe, for example, in Hungary, where they had to cross the border in 1956 with guns at their heads in the dark. Those who experienced anti-Semitism in Poland, and, some of them even saw their own parents being shot after the war. Those second generation experienced trauma. Children of Holocaust survivors who grew up in America and Canada, even in Western Europe, most of us did not personally experience any kind of trauma. So that what we're talking about is really a different kind of kettle of fish that we need to
Right.
understand as to what is the transmission for the second generation in growing up with Holocaust survivor parents. Oh, I will mention one other. Of course, there is a small group of children of Holocaust survivors who were traumatized by their parents. Those are children of Holocaust survivors who were physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused. Um, but again, that is not the majority of children of Holocaust survivors.
Now, you mentioned that many go through a kind of mourning process. What does that look like?
Yes. So, right now, most children of Holocaust survivors are in their 60s, their 70s. We have some smatterings of people in their 50s, and then, some Holocaust survivors who, particularly males who got married, for the second time or a third time when they were, in their 60s. So here there are some stragglers of children of Holocaust survivors who might be in their, 30s. Um, so if we take a look at our trajectory of our life, most of us being born, let's say, in the, late 40s, the 50s, the early 60s, um, we knew our parents had gone through something. Some of us might have seen, some pictures. There used to be these books of all the atrocities. We might have been eavesdropping on conversations that our Holocaust survivor parents had with other Holocaust survivors, and we might have heard, oh, so and so died, so and so was killed, so and so we don't know where he is. Once you begin to hear something like that, all of a sudden you go into a state of shock of, gee, so many people died. What happened to them? And then we go into a stage of denial, and where we don't really think about it. We don't really talk about it with our parents. We don't ask any questions. And then something happens and we go into a stage of confrontation. When we begin to ask questions, some children of Holocaust survivors, particularly those who maybe, let's say, in more recent years, decided to take roots trips to where their parents were or where relatives were killed during the Holocaust, to see where they grew up in shtetls or cities. So that whole process of confrontation, today we have a lot of children of Holocaust survivors doing genealogical work.
Why are they doing these root strips and
They are
looking into
doing that
genealogy?
because they wanna have a sense of rootedness. They wanna be
Mm,
connected to who they really are, to their family. They didn't just, they weren't just Canadians or
right.
Americans. They had roots that were in Europe. They had roots in Northern Africa. We tend to forget. Morocco. We tend to forget Libya, where there were Jews as well, who some of them had escaped there and were persecuted as well. So one of the things that happens is that when we begin this sense of confrontation, obviously all kinds of feelings come up. Survivor guilt comes up, a sense of, oh, gee, if I would have known, if only I could have undone some of the pain and suffering that my
Right.
parents went through, feeling very depressed. And this is the stage, this feeling stage of the mourning. Some children get stuck in that stage. By that, I mean some of them identify with the pain and suffering of the victims and feel that the only way they can identify with the pain and suffering of the victims is to themselves suffer as well. So you have some
Mhm.
children of survivors who might say, I'm going to become anorexic. I'm not going to eat because just in case I want to see what it must have been like for the survivors. Some children of Holocaust survivors put themselves into situations where they will have to somehow survive the situation. um, if we take a look at the,
Is there a connection to addiction?
it's yeah, it's sort of an addiction. For some people, it does become an addiction that they can't get out of. And this is where therapy helps when a child of Holocaust survivors begin to see that the behavior that they have taken on of identifying with the victims, or it could also be identifying with parents who were fighters and children of
Right.
survivors, for example, who, particularly in some of the Israelis' wars, the research that has been done after the Six-Day War, where you had children of Holocaust survivors fighting there, a lot of them specifically chose the most um, complicated and difficult battles to
Dangerous.
be in, rather
Yeah,
than
you've
different
Dr.
jobs
Fogelman, you've described
in
how
the army.
survivor guilt can show up in surprising ways, like self-denial and emotional repression. Could you walk us through some of these manifestations?
Well, so you have children of Holocaust survivors who feel that they can't enjoy themselves. They can't do something good for themselves. They too have to suffer in some way rather than, enjoy their life. Is some of the ways in which this survivor guilt has manifested itself. Now, what happens is, so once when you have these feelings of, anger, oh, I wish I could just, go out and take revenge. Now, obviously, most of the perpetrators are deceased, but, in the early days in, 70s, 80s, 90s, when children of Holocaust survivors were beginning to explore their family past and what had happened to them and the persecution that they had experienced, there was this feeling of, wanting to take revenge in some way. And other children of Holocaust survivors have found either creative ways to channel some of these feelings. By that, I mean children of Holocaust survivors who have made films about their families, about the Holocaust. Uh, Children of Holocaust survivors who've written plays. children of Holocaust survivors who've created musical experiences. Then you have children of Holocaust survivors. Oh, and also let's not forget, so this is the, the performing arts, and then we also have the visual arts. We now have a lot of children of Holocaust survivors who wanted to express whatever it was they were feeling through art in order to get other people to begin to feel different aspects of their parents' experience. So, for example, one woman had out of ceramic. She did a ceramic piece of bread, and in the bread there was a hole, and there were lots of them. And so, this was, the sense of, what she was experiencing and remembering was her parents, starvation. There are artists who, drew their parents' number on their arm. There are artists whose parents had escaped by boat, and they did a representational, boat of escaping.
Right. Now
Then
you've also talked about this idea of unconscious survival simulations. What does that mean?
Well, the unconscious simulation is what I'm talking about, where we have the sense of transposition, where we're living in the present as if it is the past. So, what I'm talking about was putting yourself into a dangerous situation in order to survive.
Chosen for What is brought to you by the Foundation for Genocide Education. To learn more or to make a donation, head to gened.org. You'll find the link in the show notes. And now, back to the podcast.
What about second generation who say to themselves, our parents said it could happen again, and we said, no, it could never happen again. But what about second generation survivors who say, what would I do, or where would I hide? Who would hide me? Is that a common thought pattern among 2G?
Yeah, I would say that children of Holocaust survivors think about, you know, where would I hide? But these days, I think children of Holocaust survivors are also thinking about, will I be able to hide somebody else in my house? I
Right.
mean, today in, America, we're living in a time when, so many so many immigrants are being taken off the streets. And, what if somebody has a cleaning lady who doesn't have her green card in order to work? Will you hide that person so that she will not be, taken to, Guatemala, or now they're taking them to, to Sudan? So it works both kinds of ways. When we think about it, it's like, would I have been able to be a rescuer? Um, or, where will I be able to hide in the event that I personally have to hide? It works both ways.
You said that one of the most powerful forms of healing comes from transforming pain into purpose. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, well, so that's what I began to talk about. So one of the purposes to make films, to make people aware of the past. The other is the purpose to make people aware of the present. So, for example, you have children of Holocaust survivors who are involved in human rights. You have children of survivors who have been at the forefront of Holocaust education, teaching the next generation about what happened. You have children of Holocaust survivors who have been at the forefront of building and maintaining the Holocaust museums that exist. So these are some of the, and then obviously you have children of Holocaust survivors who are feeling that their purpose is to make sure that there's the continuity of the Jewish people. And that continuity of the Jewish people is having, having children. Having the continuity of the Jewish people is also, immersing yourself in studying the Jewish texts that the Nazis tried to burn.
Now, what about the reaction of second generation to the onslaught of anti-Semitism around the world?
Well, I think that many of us children of Holocaust survivors today feel that we we almost feel happy that our parents are not around
Uh,
to witness what is going on. I
Well,
mean,
Eva,
it's a weird.
we have to discuss this at some length. Every single second gen person I have interviewed for this podcast, every second generation person to whom I have talked to since October the 7th, have all reluctantly said the same thing. And these are people we adored our parents. We were saying, I'm glad my mom and dad aren't here to see this. What impact does that have? Because that's a radical change. We would never say we'd be happy that our parents aren't
I
here.
mean, of course not. I
Tell
mean,
me
we
about that.
we miss them. We wish they were around to see, you know, what
Of
we've
course.
done with our lives. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every day right now, I don't know what I'm going to wake up to. I mean, so this morning I wake up to, a family in St. Louis, Missouri, where three of their cars, they're living in a suburb, three of their cars were burned. Why? Because their son has become a soldier in the Israeli army, and I guess it must have been written it's been written in the newspapers. But at the same time, we also have to remember that not only are children of Holocaust survivors concerned with the anti-Semitism, we are also concerned with the fact that we also have, Gazan children that nobody came to rescue. Even during the Holocaust, we didn't have that many people who rescued children, but we did have England open its door to 10,000 children. We had, children who were hidden in monasteries and in convents, and some non-Jews took the children in. Here we don't have one country who said, we will rescue your children. And that is very, very distressing. And then we think about the fact that on October 7th, the the Israelis who were killed. Who were the Israelis who were killed who were on the kibbutzim of the border? This was, we're talking about a Vivian Silva who was burnt
Yes.
alive. And what did she do? She went into Gaza and she brought children who needed medical
Yeah. She
assistance.
spent years bringing them back and forth to Israeli
And she brought
hospitals.
them to hospitals in Israel to be taken care of. This is who they kill.
Now,
And
how
then
can
the other person who got killed there is somebody who was a high-tech guy who already was setting up all kinds of businesses with Palestinians from Gaza and Israelis so that the Palestinians in Gaza could start to benefit from this high-tech world. This is who they killed. So
how
we
can
have
future
so
gen
we have we have such conflicting feelings today.
Dr. Fogelman, how can future generations continue this work in a way that honors the past without being consumed by it?
Well, I think one way to not be consumed by it is to have life affirming activities in our own life. I think, I don't know, for me personally, being involved in a religious community um, is something that is very, very, very helpful in that, all week long I'm dealing with Holocaust survivors, with children of survivors, writing about it, reading about it. And, so I think that we all need to find the versions that give us, satisfaction, in conjunction with not forgetting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fogelman. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. Your work has helped so many people make sense of inherited trauma and find ways to live meaningfully in the shadow of the Holocaust. If you liked what you heard today, please like, follow, subscribe, share the episode. You'll find a link to make a donation to the Foundation for Genocide Education in the show notes. For the Foundation for Genocide Education, I'm Tommy Schnurmacher. Until next time.